This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 27th of May 2020, and I am DM.
I'm Tom.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, Uhuru deals RUTO another deadly blow. In the Standard, Raila's no to Nusum Kate. And in the Star, final blow to RUTO over JP.
Yes.
Shall we begin with the Nation?
The Daily Nation is telling us that the Jubilee Party juggernaut will hit its peak when the NEC, the National Executive Council, meets any day from Thursday to firm its position against rampant cases of indiscipline amongst its members. The NEC meeting will also endorse changes or coming parliamentary leadership changes, as well as parliamentary committee leadership changes. Now, in a bid to enforce discipline and deal with disloyalty, apparently, the Senate Majority Leader Irungu Kangata announced the removal of 3 Senate committee chairmen who all happen to be allied to the DP. Samson Cherargei, the Nandi senator, Dr. Christopher Langat, and John Kinyua from their respective parliamentary chairmanships, committee chairmanships. Yes,
Absolutely. So who is cracking the whip? You know what, DM? I was thinking about it earlier this morning. See, in 2013, we all called Uhuru Kenyatta Kamwana. That was the endearment term that they call him, and people called him, and that's because he was a young man and he smiled and he was charming, you know. But he also had this outlook that he wasn't a Simba, he wasn't a dictator. But post 2017, that Kamwana tag isn't there anymore. In fact, right now he looks like Simba. And,
he was Simba then, now he's Mufasa.
Now he's Mufasa.
Good.
The instruments of power have been deployed.
Absolutely. The purge continues. And in the Star, final blow to RUTO over JP. This is a story similar to that of Daily Nation. The Jubilee Party leader, we are told, continues to take back control of the party. So the Star newspaper reports that the president will unveil a fresh Jubilee National Executive Committee on Thursday that will further shrink the influence of William Ruto. And that is the NEC. The NEC is the executive body of the party. It is the organ that implements the decisions of the governing council and enforces as well the decisions of the party leadership. So it's a key organ for the party. And speaking at Jubilee headquarters yesterday, Jubilee Party Secretary General issued a warning that those who are not with the president are against him and will be cut off. Now, let me put that in military terms. What Tuju was saying is that he will show no mercy and he will take no prisoners. The enemies will be executed on the battlefield, and that is where it will end. And there's a few heads to roll, as you mentioned, DM, a few have already rolled. The next should be that of Soy MP Caleb Kositan, who has been outrightly contradicting the party secretary general and the party leader. Now, last week, viewers liked our reference to the dictator's handbook. So let me reference it again. And let me explain the systematic deconstruction of William Ruto using a concept from the book known as the 3-dimensional view of politics. So the political landscape is made up of 3 sets of people. At the bottom of the pyramid, you have the interchangeables. These are the voters. These are the masses who Ruto has banked with. And then in the middle are the influentials. These are the people within the political party and key persons in the bureaucracy as well as the legislature who play a key role in executing your agenda while in power. And at the very top, the apex, are the essentials. Now, these are found both in government and outside of government. In government, these are the honchos, the heads of departments, people as well like the CS for Interior and the Chief of Defense Forces. Outside of government, they're the tycoons with the money to bankroll campaigns, to bankroll, the leader to power.
Absolutely.
Now, here's how RUTO has been deconstructed. As soon as the handshake happened RUTO lost the essentials. Mount Kenya tycoons have not been with him since 2018, nor are the heads of the security agencies. The power base that's currently being taken away from him now are the influentials, those guys in the middle. The party, the legislature, and soon even the executive will be purged of his loyalists. And then finally, the rug will be swept from under his feet. The interchangeables who are at the bottom of the pyramid, who are really a rubber stamp for the decisions of the essentials, will be taken away from him right in front of, of his eyes in broad daylight.
How, Jim?
That is how it will happen.
That thing is so brutal. It is what you just said is so brutal. But let me tell you, that is a strategy. It is happening right before our eyes. We are watching it slowly, and the end
in slow motion.
In slow motion. And let me tell you, I personally don't think that William Ruto will be deputy president by December.
By December.
Yeah.
Do you think that we are actually underestimating the power of what did you call the people at the bottom? The interchangeables.
The interchangeables.
The people at the bottom of the pyramid, the voters. For this reason, the interchangeables for the Deputy President William Ruto are not there's two groups of them. There's the typical ethnic followership that he gets from the Rift Valley. But then he also has a philosophy, if I can call it that, the hustler nation. And these hustlers are not drawn from one ethnic group. They are strewn across the country, and they may identify with him. So there could be an underestimation there. And then the other question I have is the second, what did you call the second one?
The influentials.
The influencers.
The homers.
Why are we assuming, or actually the essentials, why are we assuming that their own tycoons only hail from central Kenya?
Well, no, they're from all over the country.
And why would their affiliation not be with?
But you see, the central Kenya ones are important because they're the ones who will. They're the gatekeepers of the Mount Kenya block, and if they're not with him, if they're not supporting him, then they will tell their block simply not to support him. And then secondly, Nikita Khrushchev told us that it is not the people who vote that matter; it is the people who count the vote that matter. And that's why partly the people at the bottom, the interchangeables, count for very little.
I do agree with Tuem.
And then finally, DM on the question of the hustlers. The hustlers are a chaotic aggregate. They don't have any form of consciousness per se.
Class is thicker than water.
Not really. Not in
Class.
Kenya. In Kenya, ethnicity is thicker than class.
But now
that's a fact of the matter. That's our organizing principle for elections.
This is the thing, is that he has both. He has both class and ethnicity.
I forgot to bring my popcorn today.
Yeah.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we have a three-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines. We ask, are they topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and finally, thoughtful or just plain lazy.
This is a thoughtful headline, I think.
Yes,
Deals Ruto another deadly blow. You want to know what that blow is.
Absolutely. So do we toss the star on the final blow?
I think so.
All right, so we'll toss the star.
We haven't done the standard yet, guys.
And yes, on to the standard.
Yes, so Raila's no to Nusu Mkate. And Raila is telling us that he's not negotiating for a coalition government with Jubilee. And he says that I want to make it clear that Jubilee has not asked us to join government as a coalition partner. We also have never discussed such a thing with them. And I said,
that's an evasive answer.
Come on, of course there is a deal. But Raila is also very clever here because what he's doing, he's playing the long-term game.
Yeah.
You see, the superior thing here is the end game for him. And the end game for him, let's speak honestly, it is a parliamentary system. He sees himself as part of a parliamentary system. You see, the small factors, the small parties, KANU and Wiper and ANC coming in together, these guys would look for an agreement that will help them survive and enjoy some incumbency. But what Raila is seeing himself is him being at the top of the food chain post 2020, not 2022, post 2020.
So actually for him, coalition formation is actually tactical. tactical. It's not strategic.
Yes.
The intentions are very present. They have immediate purposes like the reconfiguration of leadership in the houses and executing whatever agendas that they have right now.
Precisely.
But in the future, the coalitions as we know them may not be instrumental in attaining in attaining leadership because the game would have changed. So you'll be going to and you'll need a new map to get there.
And you see, this should be a little bit of advice for William Ruto. Maybe what he should have done much earlier is to retreat, because he may be fighting for a position that may not exist after this year, may not exist in 2021, may not exist in 2022. If a parliamentary system is the way to go, I think he should readjust his expectations. And instead of fighting this, because the trains left the station, and we can see all manner of coalitions agreement forming. He should be a little bit more pragmatic and wise than him.
Maybe he has his own strategy that he's also drawn from the dictator's handbook.
Maybe.
Let me just comment on this one. What Raila has always wanted, as Kiraito Murungi said, was to seize power through the back door. I think it's either Kiraito Murungi or Chris Murungara who said that in the days of Bomas. And he's going to get that now, finally. The timing is right.
Yeah. His dreams are coming
true. The parliamentary system will take effect, perhaps, at the end of this year. Yeah. And he'll manage to weave his way into power. So you're right to him. He's playing for...
He's a long game guy.
For the long game. He's a long game guy.
Yeah.
Great. So do we then...
the Daily Nation.
We give to the Daily Nation.
Daily Nation.
Fantastic. And we'll toss the standards. All right, and on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. We have a 3-part criteria that we use to assess them. Are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, and finally effective or just plain lazy?
Yeah.
What have we got in the Daily Nation?
You have it's very funny, caricature of Raila Odinga, and what he has on him is a plane, and he is that's a plank of wood, correct?
Yes.
The plank of wood is being held by James Orengo, but out there is a small little knot. It's either a branch or a knot, and it's in the shape of the head of Ole Kina, the senator for Narok, and Raila has a tape measure and is measuring the size of the knot, and the caption there is "I pledge my loyalty." See, yesterday this Ole Kina guy took Masai elders to Raila's home to seek for forgiveness, and Baba was all too graceful. He forgave his sins, and he said, "You will not be punished by ODM for the sins that you committed. I accept your apology." So he will not be shaved off the plank of ODM. Plank of wood is ODM.
What do we think of the cartoon?
Not bad, but I think there's better.
It's just okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we toss it?
We toss it.
I think we toss it.
Toss that one to her.
Yeah.
All right. And what do we have in the Standard?
In the Standard, we have the president in an old car, and which is laden with a lot of luggage, and it says the economy. So he's driving the economy, but he's driving it uphill and on a hill that is full of the coronavirus. So moving is difficult, and you can even see that the car is sputtering there and producing smoke. But behind the car is what I'm going to assume is a poor Kenyan with a mask on, who is very skinny and doesn't look like he has the capacity to make the car move, but he's pushing it, and the president is saying, "Push harder."
That person is actually caricature of Ruto.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
How do you know? And he has a mask on.
It's just Ruto. And he's being set up so that he catches corona as he's pushing the car.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
In the Star.
Do we put that in the parking bay? Let me describe the Star.
Yeah.
In the Star, we have a cartoon titled Playing Hard to Get. Ozone has drawn a caricature here of Musalia Mudavadi in an elegant black gown.
A voluptuous Mudavadi.
Voluptuous Mudavadi. With Atwoli wooing him to sit on the kingpin's throne.
Saying, yes, yes.
Escorting Atwoli is the president, holding a bouquet of roses.
Yeah.
And on the other side of Mudavadi is Ruto, down on one knee proposing to him. And a flattered Mudavadi responds by saying,
"Oh my God.
Oh my God. Aki you guys.
That's right. I couldn't say it. So the cartoon suggests that Mudavadi is being courted by Uhuru and Ruto to enter into a coalition agreement with them.
And that he's enjoying it.
And he's enjoying it, absolutely. A good one, very humorous. Good comic relief here. Whom do we award the winning cartoon?
I don't know. I really like the Star, man.
So do I.
So do I.
It's interesting and it's funny.
I like the star.
So our wedding cartoon to the star. Absolutely. And so, what is our final thought?
And now, our final thought. It is inspired by the book entitled The State of Africa, A History of the Continent Since Independence by Martin Meredith. Now, this week in the run-up to Madaraka Day, we shall take a political economic audit of our African nations since they got independence from the early 50s, from the early 60s until now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so in the third part of the book, the author begins us off with a story of red tears. It's a story of Ethiopia in the mid-80s as they navigated the famine of 1984.
Yeah.
And so yesterday I narrated the story of the death of an emperor, that is Haile Selassie. And the story carries on. At this time, it's about Haile Selassie's successor, Colonel Mengistu Haile Mariam.
Yes.
So a decade after the dethronement of Haile Selassie, Colonel Mengistu was at the peak of his reign.
Yeah.
He wanted to host a spectacular celebration to celebrate Ethiopia's 1974 revolution. But it was actually a coup d'etat.
Yes.
He says it was a revolution, but it was a coup d'etat, the author. And so he wanted to use that occasion to launch as well the Communist Workers' Party of Ethiopia, drawing inspiration from Lenin and Marx. Amidst the preparation, however, Ethiopia experienced its greatest disaster of the 20th century, and that was the famine of 1984.
Yeah.
Many of you might remember it. Any child, I think, born in the mid-80s, in the early 90s, is probably familiar with images of that famine, as well as all the support that went into putting together financial aid for Ethiopia.
Including a song by Michael Jackson.
Precisely. We Are the World by Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, directed by Quincy Jones. This is the song for which, this is the famine for which that song was composed. And so the famine, we're told, had three primary causes. First was the drought, which happened once every decade. Second, however, was Mengistu's problematic agricultural policies that prioritized feeding the towns and the army over the peasants. I won't go into too much of that. And then the third, that we're told, that made the situation go from bad to worse, was the counter-insurgency war that he was fighting in a place called Tigray and northern Wollo, where the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front was firmly entrenched. And so those battles, we're told, caused massive disruption to farmers and food production. Vast areas of agricultural land were set ablaze, people were displaced, and so on and so forth. Those were the primary causes of the famine. And when the drought struck, when the famine happened, Mengistu was suboptimal to respond. And that's because, obviously it struck what he perceived as his enemies, the people who he perceived as enemies. Yeah. And so he just really wanted nature to finish them. He thought nature should come in and help him fight that battle for him. And so he shut off the international community from covering this. But in 1984, the world came to learn of the extent of the drought when a Kenyan TV cameraman by the name of Mohammed Amin arrived in a place called Korem and captured live images of the sufferers. And his film was broadcast, we're told, by 425 TV stations. That is when the world came to know of the extent, and that's also when the world responded. The author says finally that perhaps 1 million people died in the Ethiopian famine of 84 to 85. Mengistu is still alive. He was deposed in 91 and now lives in exile in Zimbabwe. That's the story.
Yeah.
Sad one.
It is a sad one.
Yeah.
So I looked at Black Hawk Down, a story about Somalia. Now, unlike most other African countries, Somalia embarked on independence with a strong sense of nationalism.
Oh, yeah.
Because unlike other African countries, they are very homogeneous. They have the same language, the same pastoral culture, and of course the same religion. Right. So their nationality was very strong. However, by a cruel twist of fate, as happened in the scramble for Africa in the late 19th century, the Somali people were split into 5 countries. The French occupied French Somaliland. The British acquired northern Somaliland. The Italians established the Italian colony of Somalia with the capital in Mogadishu. The British colony of Kenya incorporated Somali communities in what became the Northern Frontier District. And then the Ethiopian Empire, led by Emperor Menelik, extended the borders of his empire, and Somalis in the Ogaden Plateau came under Ethiopian jurisdiction. So at independence in 1960, the British Somaliland and Italian Somalia were joined to form the Somali Republic. So after independence, it became an overriding ambition for Somalis to Somali nationalists to establish a greater Somalia. And in fact, this is actually incorporated into the constitution. And if you look at the Somali flag, it has the 5-point star representing the peoples of Somalia in the 5 different, strewn in different places. But beneath that passionate nationalism, there was, and there still is, I can say, deep fragmentation amongst the Somali people because of clans. There's very distinct clans, and they are very important. And they played a very big role in politics. By the time Somalia had a military coup and Siad Barre came at the helm, he really instrumentalized clan dynamics in his leadership and in keeping the fragmentation. But of course, he continued with the greater Somalia nationalism of trying to bring back the Somali people and Somali territory. So he got into a partnership with the Soviets to fight with the sole purpose at that time of fighting Mengistu in order to get back Ogaden. But at some point, and I'm going to go really fast because there's so much to unpack in this story. At some point, Soviet allegiance shifted to Ethiopia. And Siad Barre was left alone. And this is when he turned to America. Remember, this was at the height of the Cold War. And if you were anti-communist, then you were America's friend. So America poured a lot of aid into Somalia at that time to the tune of, in the 1980s, the tune of $80 million at that time. In fact, Somalia was so flooded with foreign aid that per capita foreign aid was $80, like 8,000 shillings then per person. And of course, in exchange, America got military access to ports and airfields. As usual, there's always something in exchange. So fast forward to the 1990s, and Siad Barre was coming to the end of his 21-year regime. There was so much internal fragmentation, and the country had just become a running battlefield. In fact, at that time, Siad Barre had lost so much traction that he was known as the mayor of Mogadishu. Like, his power did not extend beyond the capital. So the country was plunged into a chaotic state of war. By the time Siad Barre fled to exile in 1992, there was war, there was famine, and there was starvation. And Somali's plight attracted the attention of a young, ambitious Egyptian man called Boutros Ghali, who was the UN Secretary General at that time. So Boutros Ghali managed, he was very ambitious, and he wanted the UN to have this all-encompassing scope in peace building and peacemaking and diplomacy, especially during the post-war era. He managed to get to co-opt America into supporting him to intervene in Somalia. At that time, the president of America was George Bush Sr., and remember, he had just had a triumph in the Gulf War. He wanted the world to see America not just as a military powerhouse, but also having a military that could do other operations besides war. So long story short, America came in with joined forces with the UN and did an operation that George Bush called Operation Restore Hope. And the intention was to go and rebuild and restructure Somalia and to bring back peace. Of course, I'm really jumping forward. So by the time America was in Somalia, they undertook, at some point, the intention became to capture one of the, or actually I skipped a part, By the time Siad Barre was leaving after his 21-year rule, enter General Mohammed Farah Aidid, who came in and was fighting with Ali Mahdi Mohammed to gain control of Somalia. So by October 1993, America's intention was to capture Farah Aidid. And they did a lot of operations to try and capture him, but they failed. Farah Aidid was always a step ahead of them. In fact, even as they were hunting him down, he still had time to do TV interviews. They would see him on TV and still not catch him. On the 3rd of October 1993, they launched a very fateful operation. America went all out. They got word that Farah Aidid's close associates were somewhere in Mogadishu city in a district called the Black Sea District. So they sent 16 helicopters, Black Hawks, 12 vehicles for a ground convoy to go and capture those associates. And the strike force consisted of 160 elite rangers and Delta Force operators, with, of course, with enormous power. So the mission was meant to take 1 hour. It ended up taking 15 hours. Why? Because they didn't anticipate that as they descend on this part of Mogadishu, they were actually going to battle with the citizens. Once the helicopters showed up in the sky, when they came from the international airport, citizens picked up their arms and started shooting at them. And they also started shooting at the convoys that were headed to capture them, Farah Aidid's associates. One Black Hawk came down, another Black Hawk came down, the helicopters. They continued shooting at them and they retreated. They limped away to safety. In the end, after 15 hours of running battles and American soldiers hiding, 18 died, 170 people were seriously wounded. So when they had Americans managed to escape after 15 hours, 2 American soldiers were dragged down the street in victory. Which was a sight that was widely shared in Somali television. Now, the greatest military in the world, with elite rangers, had been defeated and humiliated by ragtag militia. So President Clinton at this time was president, and he called for the end of the hunt for Farah Aidid. Basically, they gave up and they terminated U.S. involvement in Somalia. This led to the United Nations also terminating their intervention in Somalia. So basically, they gave up and retreated. And the Black Hawk actually incident brought about in America a presidential directive that totally limited U.S. intervention unless it was very strategic to American interest. They would not intervene in.
So that was a turning point for their foreign policy.
It was a turning point, but it was also an important turning point because remember this was 1993, and another catastrophe was just about to unfold in Africa, still in the region. That is, of course, in Rwanda. In fact, Martin Meredith, the author of the book, ends this chapter by saying, just when a far greater catastrophe than Somalia was about to erupt, the US and the UN had been reduced to the role of bystanders.
Now, who would have thought Somalia would have injured the Americans like that? What a story, man. No, I was enjoying Martin Meredith, this book, until I read the chapter, A Time of Triumph. And I asked, a time of triumph for who exactly? Now, it's a story about the apartheid arrangement and government in South Africa. And I want to start with a statement. I want to start by saying, by the time South Africa achieved independence, the white man had the capital. The black man had the vote. Now, before I explain to you why I said that, just let me read an excerpt from the book. He says, as the sun rose over the rolling hills of Natal on 26th April 1994, Nelson Mandela walked up the steps of Olange School in Inanda near Durban to cast his vote. He emerged from the polling station, his face wreathed in smiles, and spoke of a bright future. He says, this is for all South Africans an unforgettable occasion. We are moving from an era of resistance, division, oppression, turmoil and conflict, and starting a new era of hope, reconciliation and nation building. I say, wow, nation building. But let me just read for you some statistics. See, the top management positions in South Africa, 67% of them are controlled by white people.
Currently.
Black Africans control 14.3% of those positions. Indians, 9.4% of those positions. And the coloreds, 5.1%. Now, let's go to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Black ownership in the JSE is just 27% of that entire stock exchange, 27%. Now, only 3% of the biggest firms in South Africa are controlled by black Africans.
Yeah.
But I'm not done yet. There's a place called Orania, guys. Orania is in the northern part of Cape Town. This city is a white-only city, only inhabited by white Afrikaners. Now, 26 years, and black people are not allowed to work and live and work in this place called Orania. 26 years after independence. Now, I will not tell you what this means, all right? All I'm just going to do right now is end by saying, by the time South Africa achieved independence, the white man had the capital, the black man had the vote.
Yeah, absolutely.
Started the same, ended the same.
It's ended the same way. Political power without economic liberation is just neocolonialism. And that's, we must, as Africans, seek to liberate ourselves economically.
No, JM, I asked myself, were we too nice to some founding fathers? I don't want to say anything wrong about Nelson Mandela. I mean, he's dead. But I think South Africans got a raw deal. If you have something about a program called the Black Economic Empowerment Program in South Africa, this kind of statistics is not what we should be seeing right now. All right, this is a minority. I mean, the whites in South Africa are a minority. As to how they still end up controlling the economic landscape of South Africa, and even telling Africans, you cannot occupy this piece of land. For goodness sake, this is your land, and some fellows are telling you that you cannot live and work in that piece of land.
You know, Robert Mugabe thought as much. He said in an interview once that Nelson Mandela did too little for his people, to empower his people. He could have done a lot more.
I think we need a whole episode to discuss that.
We need
to discuss that, and
absolutely,
and to discuss the need for both economic and political.
I know what you're going.
And political power for the African people.
For the African people. Thank you very much. So on a day when we had a winning headline from The Nation and a winning cartoon from The Star, I will remind you, please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on your TV screens. We are on Pan Free to Air, Grow TV, and Star Times. Thank you and have a good evening.